Today I'm going to be taking a look at The Big Bang Theory Season 2, Episode 2, The Codpiece Topology. This episode gets this title because in this episode the gang visits the Renaissance Fair. And that's right where this episode starts off. At the beginning of the episode, the gang is arriving back from the Renaissance Fair. Sheldon's pretty upset about various historical inaccuracies that he noticed during the event, and the rest of the group tries to convince him that it's all for fun. As they're on their way up the stairs, they bump into Penny, who is with a new guy, which makes it a very awkward situation for Leonard. As we saw in episode 1, he was still trying to make a valid attempt at starting a relationship with Penny, although things didn't go very well, and now we get our answer from Penny, and it seems that she has decided to go a different direction. We do get a funny moment here as they're making their way back to the apartment, where Sheldon reveals in his attempts to remain historically accurate, he has fashioned underwear made out of linen from one of Leonard's pillowcases, which he notes is only borrowed, and Leonard is notably upset by this because who wants that back? Back at the apartment, they discuss Leonard's disappointment with Penny being with a new guy and moving on. He tries to claim that he's moved on too, and why not? He said he's dated plenty of women, and we find out that really it's only two. It was Joyce Kim and Leslie Winkle, and Leonard noted that Leslie Winkle was really only using him for physical stress relief. They note that he should try again with Leslie, although Leonard says he doesn't think it would work out. The next day at the school, however, we do have the return of Leslie Winkle, who is Sheldon's original rival on the show. I always like having a character who can kind of knock Sheldon down a little bit, just because I love Sheldon's character all around, but he gets away with a lot with his friends, so it's nice when he has these characters who tend to knock him down a peg or two. Leslie reveals that she found out from Howard that Leonard and Penny are no longer a thing, so she said she'd like to give their romance another try, and Leonard thinks he means just sleeping together again, but she clarifies that she's looking for a serious relationship this time, and would like to try to have a legitimate date. She sets some very specific parameters for the date, but tells Leonard he's the man so he can pick. The night of their date arrives, and Sheldon comes in thinking they're going to play vintage game night, playing on the Nintendo 64 that his mother had just mailed to him, but Leonard informs him that he has a date and he'd like the apartment to himself. Sheldon doesn't like this. He doesn't want to be kicked out of his own apartment, but after Leonard explains to him basically that if he ever finds someone of his own species and has a date, he would too step aside. So, reluctantly, Sheldon does leave the apartment and ends up playing video games down on the stairs, where he sees Penny heading out for her own date. She asks him why he doesn't do something else like go see a movie, and Sheldon, of course, has a plethora of objections as to why he couldn't do something like that. On their date, Leslie wastes a little time asking Leonard how many children he thinks they should have. When he's a little bit shocked, she says, "Oh no, we can slow down and talk about your genetic dispositions first," including things like his lactose intolerance. And Sheldon, making his first interruption of their date to grab an extension cord to power his computer, notes that Leonard's family also has male pattern baldness. Another interesting part here, not just a small detail that most people might not notice, but when Sheldon goes out dragging the extension cord and pulls it, it's pretty tight when he pulls it. Leonard walks over and closes the door really quickly, no problem, and when you look later, the cord is neatly fitted under the door. This wouldn't have happened. He would have closed the door right on that extension cord and wouldn't have been able to close it properly right away. Just a small detail, but something that stands out to me in these type of shows. Sheldon comes back for a second interruption because he needs to use the bathroom. When the date is over and Leslie is leaving, she gives Leonard some more instructions, but again tells him that he's the man so he gets to pick. Penny happens to be coming up the stairs with her date, and they kind of have a show-off. Leonard starts kissing Leslie really aggressively, and Penny starts kissing her date very aggressively, showing that they might not be so over each other as we were led to believe. They end this, and Leslie heads out, not missing the opportunity to throw a quick jab at Sheldon as always, calling him a dumbass, and Penny sends her date on his way as well. The next day in the cafeteria, the gang is discussing a return to the Renaissance Fair, and Sheldon says he's not interested, too many inaccuracies, and they give him an interesting idea to go as a Star Trek science officer exploring another time period that replicates Earth. Sheldon, noting that this would be like Spock, is very intrigued by the idea. Leslie Winkle approaches the table, throws another jab at Sheldon, and Leonard suggests that they move to a bigger table so that Leslie can sit with them. Sheldon's had enough at this point. He doesn't want to sit with Leslie, so he chooses to stay at his table and tells Leonard that he needs to pick between the two. Leonard, of course, goes with Leslie and sits at the other table. So next, it's another date night for Leonard and Leslie, and therefore Sheldon is back on the stairs playing his game. He comes across Penny again as she's coming up the stairs, and she asks him again why he doesn't go out, and of course he's still dismissive of it. But he does take the opportunity to ask Penny about her relationship with Leonard. He asks if she gave it a fair go and tried again, because he says he really doesn't like Leslie, and so the idea of her dating Leonard is much less objectionable. Penny basically said they gave it a try, but they're just going to remain friends, to which Sheldon wasn't satisfied and says that doesn't work for him. And she tried to tell him that he's not going to be able to stop Leonard and Leslie from being together, to which he said she's doubting the wrong person. And she then told him if he wants to be a good friend to Leonard, he shouldn't try to stand in the way of him and Leslie. Sheldon goes upstairs and interrupts Leonard and Leslie while they look like they're in the middle of making out, and he says he wants to talk. He says that he understands that Leonard is his friend and he doesn't want to stand in the way of their relationship, but it would appear Sheldon does have a little plan to cause some trouble, and it works. He says that Leslie is a subpar scientist and he doesn't know why anybody would think that. Loop quantum gravity would be a better explanation than string theory to unify quantum mechanics. Leslie is immediately very insulted and jumps to the defense of this, to which Sheldon just makes a dismissive comment, which draws Leonard into the conversation by asking if he's going to let Sheldon talk to her that way. After a little back and forth, Leonard reveals that he prefers string theory as well, and that's it. Leslie immediately cuts things off and breaks off the relationship because she says she couldn't deal with them raising their kids to believe in string theory. So that is the end of Leslie and Leonard Take 2. Leonard's kind of upset, but Leonard reminds him that it's only 9 more months to Comic-Con, and that does seem to cheer Leonard up quite a bit. And we do end the episode with the gang back at the Renaissance Fair, and as promised, Sheldon is dressed as Spock, and he is walking around, scanning the environment as a science officer would. This is a pretty fun episode. I like any episode with Leslie Winkle in it. I do like that rivalry between Sheldon and Leslie. As I had stated, she's the first major rival that Sheldon has on the show, but far from the last. And the other key takeaway from this episode is the Leonard and Penny situation. We do see that Penny has moved on, she's with a new guy, and Leonard's trying to move on as well. Their first attempt at a relationship has failed, but they clearly both haven't moved on, as they did try to both make each other jealous when they were each seeing each other with their new significant other. This is a solid episode, and I would rate it at an 8 out of 10. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and keep an eye out for the next episode coming soon.